Dr. Courtney with 3 common misconceptions about stress. Over 25 years of working with people from pretty much every different background, I noticed a pattern that became hard to ignore. Whether it was executives or physicians or therapists, entrepreneurs, it just didn't matter. There was this pattern that I couldn't get out of my head. The people who appeared to have the most success on the outside were actually often struggling the most on the inside. At first, I assumed I was looking at dozens of unrelated problems. Some people looked like they were burnt out. Others had anxiety, exhaustion, marital problems, work stress, you name it. And that all looked different on paper. But the more I started looking at it, the more I realized that it was the same pattern. What I was seeing was stress, and not acute stress, not just a difficult week, not the normal challenges that come with day to day life. I was seeing the effects of chronic stress. And this is the kind of stress that quietly moves into the basement and doesn't leave a forwarding address, but drops a lot of invoices with taxes on unpaid stress. So, a few years ago, a woman came down from New York and she was really excited about the retreat, and lots of people were together. Everyone had their own Airbnb, so she turned in her phone with the promise and the hope that she would finally step out of that New York stress. And without trying to be deceitful, but just being practical, she brought along her laptop. Well, what she didn't think about was that on her laptop, she wasn't just going to be doing these little exercises that she promised herself she was going to do. All of a sudden, she got into answering emails. Then she got into editing the website. She finally had some chance to do things a chance to do things she hadn't been able to do in a long time. And before you know it, I think what happened was that her daughter pinged her. She ends up fighting with her daughter because her child is mad that she left town for a little while. Yeah. So the thing is whether or not we intend to take this stress with us, we do. And so she's asking, what's wrong with me? Why would I do something so silly? I really meant to just focus on the retreat. And the thing is she was demonstrating one of the most common patterns I see. The stressful event, the stress from home, it doesn't just end when the event is over. Even though the pressure has eased, the invoice is still arriving. This observation points to the first misconception that many people have about stress. They think that stress only affects them while the stressful thing is happening, but increasingly, both research and my personal experience suggest otherwise. The deadline passes, the meeting ends, the crisis resolves, the children grow up. Yet, the nervous system may continue paying for these events long after the original event has disappeared. So, the second misconception about stress is that rest automatically resets and creates recovery. But that's not the case. Many people are resting with a system that never actually powered down. The environment changed, but the operating system did not. They never take the vacation. They never really clear the calendar. They barely sleep in, and they still wonder why they don't feel restored. The third misconception may be the most difficult of all. Many people assume if they cannot relax, there must be something wrong with them. What if the opposite was true? What if your system was behaving exactly the way it was designed to? What if it was sending you this signal that something is wrong and it needs to actually rest and reset on a different level? This is where my thinking began to change as I was watching people over the years. I stopped asking, what's wrong with these people? And I started asking, what's happening to these people that they're completely unable to actually reset? So that question led me to years of researching and studying stress, resilience, trauma, behavior, performance, and productivity in every different area of life. So here's the thing. Stress is expensive. It doesn't just ask you to pay while the stressful event is happening. It's not just expensive because it feels unpleasant, but equally because it keeps on charging interest in every area of life. It never fully goes away until you know how to reset your operating system. It charges interest on attention, focus, creativity, health, relationships, leadership, presence, and of course, joy. Most people never receive an invoice labeled stress, obviously. Instead, the invoices arrive as fatigue, brain fog, irritability, lack of focus, lack of motivation, difficulty concentrating, maybe even emotional reactivity, and the persistent feeling that something is off even when it looks good on paper. Because people don't understand what those symptoms are communicating, they often mistake them for personal failures and blame themselves. I've watched executives build empires that they no longer have the ability to enjoy. I've watched physicians save lives while losing access to their own life and their own vitality. I've watched therapists understand human behavior brilliantly while remaining chronically exhausted about their own life. I've also watched parents who deeply love their children discover that they no longer have access to the presence that they wish they could give their families. So the tragedy is not that stress exists. The tragedy is that most people never even see the bill. They assume that they have an energy problem, a personal ethical problem, a motivational problem, or a discipline problem, maybe a relationship problem, when in reality, they may be paying interest on years of accumulated stress. Compass begins with a different question. What is stress costing you? Because until you can see the invoice, you can't change the transaction. This is Dr. Courtney, and I'll see you in video number 2 next in this 4-part series. Bye for now.